Alan Rabinowitz here for CreativeCow.net. In this tutorial, we're going to look at a device used in tons of films and television shows to look back into the past. Now, we're not talking about your 1.21 gigawatt base time machine. We're talking about the flashback. That little trick you used to show how things used to be, or how they happened, or hey, maybe how they might have happened. You know, if you're watching one of those crime dramas like CSI or CSI Miami or CSI New York, or no, that pretty much covers it. Yeah, CSI. Anyway, the point is that sooner or later, you're going to be asked by a client, or maybe you'll just want to create the look of a flashback. And you know, why don't we just give it what the French call, I don't know, pizzazz. I don't think that's French. I don't even know what that is, and I wouldn't go around using that word. But the point is, there are a lot of ways that you can create the flashback look. And in this action-packed tutorial adventure, I'll try to recreate the look seen in the Bourne Identity, or the Bourne Supremacy, or the Bourne Ultimatum. One of the Bourne movies, right? There's a lot of Bourne movies and there's a lot of flashbacks. So one of those, possibly all of them. I haven't seen them in a while, but you get the point. And I'm so excited about this tutorial that I've created a special action explosive opening, and here it comes for a tutorial that I'm calling the Bourne Flashback. Oh, you know you want to watch it. Yeah.
Nice, right? Yeah. Well, I hope you enjoyed it, because that was our complete budget for 2008-2009 here at the Creative Cow After Effects podcast. I'm just kidding. Special thanks to our friends at artbeats.com for giving us the explosion footage. Okay, so here we are in After Effects with my footage. This is my cat Conway chasing a tinsel toy. Exciting stuff, I know. So with the footage selected, I'll choose Effect, Color Correction, Levels, Individual Controls. This version of the Levels effect allows you to individually adjust the levels of each of the RGB channels, but it also allows you to adjust the levels for all three at once. In the Effects panel, I'll twirl down the green property, and I'll set the green gamma to 1.5. Then I'll twirl down the blue property and do the same thing for the blue gamma, setting it to 1.5 as well. This creates a blue-green tone to the footage. Obviously, there are a lot of effects that you can use to create this sort of look, so don't let me tell you how to do it. Play around with the other color correction effects to get just the look you want. Next, in the Levels effect, I'll go up to the RGB property and twirl that down. I'll set the input black to 25, and then I'll set the input white down to 230, which tightens up the dark and the light areas a bit. Next, I'll duplicate the footage by selecting it and hitting Ctrl-D or Command-D if you're on a Macintosh. Then I'll select the top layer, and in the Effects panel, I'll go into the Levels Effects histogram and crush the input black and whites towards the higher values, the ones to the right of the histogram. This is the same as changing the numeric values for the input black and input white properties in the RGB areas of this effect. What I'm trying to do here is isolate only the brightest areas of the image and make the rest of it black. The values will differ from video to video. With this layer still selected, I'll choose Effect, Blur and Sharpen, Fast Blur. In the Effects panel, I'll set the blur dimensions to vertical, and I'll drag the blurriness up a lot, and I mean a lot. It'll vary from footage to footage, but in this case, I'll bring it up to about 400. Don't be surprised if you need to go even higher to create these vertical blurred highlights. Oh, and don't forget to activate the property called Repeat Edge Pixels, which will fill in the areas at the edge of the screen which have kind of disappeared from the blurriness. Next, set the layer's transfer or blending mode to Add. This allows the highlights to show through and add to the footage below. But you know what? I'd prefer it if the highlights didn't have too much color. I'd like to desaturate the highlights. So I'll choose Effect, Color Correction, Hue and Saturation. Then I'll set the master saturation to -100. You know, I'm kind of torn here because sometimes I really like having those extended colored highlights that I had a moment ago. In this case, I don't, but you should play around and figure out what works for you. Now, I'd like to see these highlights a little bit more, so I'll duplicate my top layer by selecting it and choosing Ctrl-D or again, Command-D on a Mac. Now that pops. Good. Okay, now I'd like to add some blur to the edges of the video. and I'll use an adjustment layer so I can affect every layer below. I'll choose Layer, New, Adjustment Layer. Then I'll choose Effect, Blur and Sharpen, Fast Blur. Then in the effects panel, I'll bring the blurriness values up a bunch. Also, I'll activate the Repeat Edge Pixels property to ensure that my edges don't fade to nothingness. Now, I want to blur only the edges of the footage, and the adjustment layer affects everything below itself. To fix this, I'll need to mask off the adjustment layer to control what areas get that blur effect. So with the adjustment layer selected, I'll go up to the mask tools, and I'll activate the ellipse mask tool, and then I'll double click on it to create an ellipse mask with a radius that matches the dimensions of the footage. However, this creates the opposite of the effect that I'm trying to get. The inside of the mask is blurry while the outside is clear. So I'll need to invert the mask. So in the timeline, in the mask properties, I'll click on Invert. You could also get a similar effect by changing the mask mode from Add to Subtract. Okay, we're almost there, but the edge of the blur is too sharp. I'd like to feather the mask to create a blurry edge so that there's some fall off from blurry footage to footage that's in focus. So with the adjustment layer selected, I'll hit MM to reveal all of the mask's properties. And then I'll set the mask's feather property up a bunch. We're almost there, but not quite. The blur is only happening at the very edges of the screen. Not enough for me. The problem is that due to the mask's edges being at the very edge of the footage, this means that only the very outer edges of the footage are getting blurred, and I'd like more of the footage to be blurry. So I'll set the mask's expansion property into negative numbers just a bit, which makes the mask contract and therefore behave as if it were a little smaller, adding more blur to the edges. Okay, just one final touch. Add a new solid by choosing Layer, New, Solid. And in the dialog, go into the color chooser and set the color to black. Then click OK to confirm the color. When that's done, make sure that the solid is set to the same size as the composition, and then click OK to get back into the main interface. Hit T to reveal the layer's opacity, and then in the timeline, set the black solid's opacity to 20%. Then add an expression to the opacity by alt-clicking on the opacity stopwatch, and in the expression editor, type in wiggle, open parentheses, 6, 20, close parentheses. This will make the black solid change its opacity 6 times a second up to 20%, essentially creating random levels of darkness that flicker. Finally, set the black solid layer's transfer mode to overlay, which preserves highlights and shadows in the video but affects most of the colors. It's hard to verbally describe what this blending mode is doing, so take a few moments to look and see the difference between the normal blending mode and overlay. Well, there you go. A quick RAM preview, and we have our flashback. Man, remember that time when Conway was chasing that tinsel toy? Oh yeah, that was awesome. Well, maybe not. But hey, you can use this technique to create your own awesome and exciting flashbacks.
Whew, that was exciting. Is it hot in here or is it just me? Whew, just give me one sec. Oh. Hey, sorry. Yeah. I just wanted to take a moment to thank all the people who have been emailing me to let me know how the tutorials are helping them. And hey, if they've helped you, please let me know. Send an email to the address you're seeing below on your screen. I would love to hear from you, and hey, even see samples of stuff that you've done. And hey, let me know how your parents are doing, and you know, your kids and your pets, and if you got any good insider trading tips. That last comment was for entertainment purposes only. No, it wasn't. Anyway, hope this tutorial has left you with some fond memories, because you know you get it with the memories and the flashback, and I shouldn't have gone there. Yeah. Once again, this is Aaron Rabinowitz for CreativeCow.net.